In this episode of Quakers Today, we are curious about the impacts of affinity groups and how they offer a place for community and spiritual nourishment.
Writer and activist Eileen Flanagan tells us about her new book, Common Ground: How the Crisis of the Earth is Saving Us from Our Illusion of Separation.
Willa Tabor shares how a queer Christian Quaker meeting gave her joy and community while navigating her transition.
Vanessa Julye and Curtis Spence, two African-American friends, speak from the heart about why affinity spaces are a sacred necessity. I am Peterson Toscano.
And I am Sweet Miche.
This is Season 5, Episode 2 of the Quakers Today podcast, a project of Friends Publishing Corporation.
This season of Quakers Today is sponsored by Friends Fiduciary and the American Friends Service Committee.
Hey, Sweet Miche, one of the many things I appreciate about Quakers is the commitment to seeing and understanding people who are marginalized in society. As a society, we aspire to create and maintain a welcoming space for those who are often excluded from traditional religious settings.
Yeah, when it comes to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and non-binary people, most Quaker meetings in North America and Europe are welcoming and inclusive. But that wasn't always the case. So over 50 years ago, LGBTQ plus Quakers started creating spaces for themselves.
And now, LGBTQ plus people serve on committees, clerk yearly meetings, and are fully integrated into the life of most meetings and Quaker organizations in North America and Europe. In fact, the queer Quaker group known as FLGBTQC right now is in the midst of a discerning process about whether they should lay down their ministry.
So what about race? African Americans and Indigenous people have been connected with Quakers for hundreds of years. What is their relationship with predominantly white North American and European Quaker meetings, schools, and organizations?
One of our guests today is Vanessa Julye. She serves as Associate Secretary for Organizational Cultural Transformation with Friends General Conference, or FGC.
Vanessa works to raise awareness about white supremacy and its impact in both Quaker communities and other faith spaces. She also meets with and creates programs for BIPOC Friends around the world, sometimes in person, sometimes virtually.
Vanessa co-authored the book Fit for Freedom, Not for Friendship, a very important and influential book. For the October 2025 issue of Friends Journal, Vanessa wrote the article Affinity Spaces for BIPOC Friends, Healing from Polite White Supremacy Together.
I sat down and chatted with Vanessa about her article, why she wrote it, and why now.
Also joining us is Curtis Spence, the author of the article We Gather to Breathe, Affinity, Worship, and the Light That Disrupts. It also appears in Friends Journal.
We will share with you excerpts from both articles, along with parts of our conversation. If you want to hear the entire recording, it is available in the video version of this podcast. You'll find it on the Friends Journal YouTube page.
Affinity groups have long been sacred spaces for bonding, connecting, communicating authentically. Places where deeper relationships are built not in spite of difference, but through shared experience of being fully seen. These are spaces where people bring their full selves into the room, where trust is not assumed but nurtured.
Quakerism itself is an affinity space set apart from broader society. The joy many friends feel at yearly meetings or the FGC gathering mirrors what BIPOC friends feel in our own sacred spaces. Just as white friends find renewal in community, BIPOC friends need that too.
I didn't join a BIPOC Quaker affinity group because I had something to teach. BIPOC stands for Brown, Black, Indigenous People of Color. I joined because I needed to breathe.
Most white people in the United States of America, including Friends, live in a constant affinity space where their culture is considered the default. Eurocentric norms shape Quaker spaces. Some will say that this does not apply to the Religious Society of Friends because we are unique. Our community is different. We are the first religion to end enslavement, after all. In the BIPOC Affinity Spaces, my body relaxes, my tone and language change. In Affinity Spaces, we share our lives and get a chance to center and celebrate our abnormality, an abnormality I have grown to cherish.
These spaces are not alternatives to meeting. They are sites of revelation. These groups don't ask you to leave part of yourself outside the door.
Having a space where I do not need to constantly center polite white supremacy provides an opportunity for me to breathe. I live in a world that practices what Yawu Brown calls polite white supremacy, PWS. In a society structured around PWS, with subtle, coded, and ever-present demands to conform, BIPOC friends often feel compelled to prioritize white comfort over our own authenticity.
Affinity groups have long been sacred spaces, places where friends who have long been marginalized by mainstream Quaker culture can listen to the divine without having to over-explain their presence and their pain.
I've gone to Quaker schools as a kid in Quaker camp. It wasn't until 93 that I actually started attending worship. And there were times when I had experiences that felt were racism, that I was thinking, well, no, these are Quakers, so this can't be happening. It was wonderful to be able to be with this group of friends of color who validated for me what I was experiencing were actually times when white supremacy and racism were showing up, because that's part of our society. As much as we like to see ourselves as being different and exempt, we are not. You know, there have been times when I've been told and others have been told we're too loud or we're too angry. Yeah, we're angry. I have a right to express that. That anger can also get us killed. And expressing that anger can get us killed, or it can have us lose jobs, because the expectation is that we won't express them. That is a part of the white politeness.
This is the work of affinity worship, to create a space where beauty and disruption coexist. Affinity spaces offer a kind of soul rest, a resolution of voice and breath.
There are some friends who have said, I can't worship in my meeting anymore. And I'm so glad that these spaces are available, because without them, I'm not clear that I would continue to be a member of the Religious Society of Friends.
We didn't gather somewhere to divide the body. We gathered elsewhere to remain whole within it.
If there's a BIPOC person within Quakerism looking for a place where they can have more connections with other BIPOC people, there are resources out there. We have a Ministry on Racism program, which supports BIPOC spaces. We have retreats. Some are hybrid. If you need something in addition to being in the predominantly white Quaker spaces, those are available. I encourage you to check them out, including Ujima Friends meeting. I hope that there is a time when we can stop justifying affinity spaces. Sadly, I don't think that time's going to come until we shift the definition of normal, until all of us are able to feel that we fit that definition of normal. We're going to need the affinity spaces.
In these gatherings, we pray, we question, we speak plainly, we may cry sometimes. We hold silence, and we hold each other.
That was Vanessa Julye and Curtis Spence. Their articles appear in the October 2025 issue of Friends Journal and at friendsjournal.org. You'll find links to their articles and the video conversation at quakerstoday.org.
In the trans community, there's a lot of very deeply spiritual people. I'm Willa Tabor. I'm a transgender woman. I live in Arlington, Massachusetts, and attend Fresh Pond Meeting. And I'm also a regular attender at Three Rivers Meeting, which is a monthly meeting in New England, yearly meeting that meets entirely on Zoom. It identifies as a queer Christian meeting. Christianity, especially in the trans community, is eyed with a skeptical eye. It isn't trans people's job to heal Christianity, especially at the risk of traumatizing themselves. This is a very difficult time to be a trans person in the United States. So many people who want to be allies with the trans community, in fact, don't know many trans people and have never heard people tell their story. And so the one thing I can do in this situation is to be telling my story. Joy was my guidepost through my transition. I was absolutely amazed at how much joy I was finding in just in wearing women's clothes. And I realized that at the age of 70, I was too old to postpone joy. I realized shortly after that at 4 years old, I was too old to postpone joy, but I didn't know it then. If you're seeking for a spiritual community, look around and find one that fits and is welcoming. Any church or any spiritual organization only exists to try to provide scaffolding for a person's spiritual growth. There is a voice inside you that knows what it is you need to do and is trying to tell you. First thing I would say is find that voice and trust it and listen to it. And eventually it will lead you to the community you need to find.
That was Willa Tabor from the Quaker Speak video Identity and Christianity, Navigating Gender Transition as a Quaker.
A big thank you to Layla Cuthrell for filming and editing these videos. You can watch them on YouTube or at quakerspeak.com.
Perhaps more than any other influence, the Quaker writer and activist Eileen Flanagan has shaped my life as a potential change maker in the world. Eileen walks the walk of an activist and teacher, and she clearly communicates the practices and principles that lead to meaningful action. I reached out to Eileen to learn more about her new book, Common Grounds: How the Crisis of the Earth is Saving Us from Our Illusion of Separation.
I boiled down my dilemma to a challenging theological question. How do I love my neighbor when he is killing my other neighbors? I did not have the foresight to publish this book now. I felt that this leading dragged on way too long, and Spirit was way too slow in leading me to the right publisher. Now I see that it was exactly the right time. Many of the lessons in the book about solidarity, about taking on billionaires, are directly applicable to what people are trying to do now in resisting authoritarianism in the United States. The separation that first interested me in writing, and it's a big part of the book, but not the whole book, is the separation of race. For example, there are a lot of communities from Chester, Pennsylvania to Cancer Alley, Louisiana, where the frontline community is usually low income, often people of color who are right next to the oil refinery, the gas plant, or the toxic dump. They smell the smells. They hear the sirens. They can see the flare go off at the refinery, and they know they're breathing toxic air. But there's often a neighborhood half a mile away or a mile or 2 miles away that's breathing the same air. They're often a working class white neighborhood, but they very often don't realize that they have a pollution problem. When my daughter at age 5 got asthma and I took her to the emergency room and said to the nurse, "Why is this happening?" She's like, "Probably pollution." I didn't realize that my neighborhood full of trees was still being impacted by the oil refinery in Southwest Philly. We have a shared stake, even if the risks aren't exactly equal, which is different than just being an ally. Like, I'm your ally, but it doesn't really affect me. It's different to say we have a shared stake. I interviewed Daniel Hunter about how different groups have navigated race and how we talk about race in many issues where we have a shared but unequal impact. Daniel is so brilliant. For people who think they have the environmental justice talking points, that chapter is really thought-provoking about the pros and cons of different choices we can make in how we frame things.
Eileen Flanagan's book is Common Ground: How the Crisis of the Earth is Saving Us from Our Illusion of Separation. You can learn more about Eileen, her tour, and her writing at eileenflanagan.com.
You can read a book review by Rua Swinterfeld at friendsjournal.com. Sweet Miche, you have a recommendation for us.
I do. But before I share mine, our guests have given us some great recommendations as well. From Vanessa, we heard about Ujima Friends Meeting, an online community of friends of African descent. They meet on Sundays for worship and Wednesdays for a prayer gathering. You can learn more about them at ujimafriends.org. From Willa, we heard about Three Rivers, an online queer Christian meeting. They meet on Thursdays for worship and Sunday evenings for Vespers. They're at threeriversmeeting.org. And my recommendation for Affinity Space is the Quaker Discord channel. Discord is an app used to connect to communities with a shared interest, much like a subreddit or an old school chat room. In the Society of Friends Discord server, there are channels for friends who speak Spanish, queer friends, disabled friends, and friends who are into gardening or cooking. The URL of the server isn't podcast friendly. It's a jumble of many numbers and letters. But as always, you can find links to our recommendations at our show notes at quakerstoday.org.
You know, I used to be active in that group, and I think I got a new computer and never uploaded the app. So this is a great reminder because there was always some great conversations there and lots of like affinity groups within affinity groups. It's very sweet.
Absolutely. And it's really active. There have been several posts today.
Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of Quakers Today. If you enjoy hearing our guests give ministry on the podcast, the best way to support us is to subscribe to Friends Journal.
The second best way is to rate and review our show. Many thanks to everyone who's been sharing Quakers Today with their friends and on social media. Quakers Today is written and produced by you, Peterson Toscano.
Oh, and you, Sweet Miche. Music on today's show comes from Epidemic Sound. Season 5 of Quakers Today is sponsored by the American Friends Service Committee and Friends Fiduciary.
The American Friends Service Committee works at the forefront of social change to meet urgent needs, challenge injustice, and build peace. Millions of U.S. children rely on free school meals. In 2024, Congress created a program to help low-income families buy groceries during summer break, but 11 states refused to participate. AFSC is urging governors to accept the funding so kids can eat. You can help. Find out how to speak up at afsc.org/no-hunger-summer. Learn about other initiatives and actions at afsc.org.
Friends Fiduciary unites Quaker values with expert investing. They serve more than 460 organizations with their ethical portfolios, shareholder advocacy, and a deep commitment to justice and sustainability. In the 2024-25 proxy season, Friends Fiduciary engaged with more than 50 companies on over 30 issue areas. They filed 18 shareholder resolutions that addressed ethical business practices, advancing equity, and more. Friends Fiduciary builds a better future through values-driven investing. Learn more at friendsfiduciary.org.
Visit quakerstoday.org to see our show notes and a full transcript of this episode.
Thank you, friend. We'll see you next month. Until then, may you walk gently and find strength in community.
Let me share with you next month's question. For this one, I was inspired by a special collection I saw at Lutnick Library at Haverford College. Professor Emma Lapsanke-Werner taught a first-year writing seminar called Good Guys and Gals. The class collected books where Quakers are portrayed as plain-dressed saviors and others where Quakers are troublemakers. But the collection also featured fiction where Quaker characters are more complex. So here's my question for you. Who is someone you've encountered in fiction that embodies Quakerness? The character could be from a book or movie. They could be a hero of the story or an extra without any lines.
All right, so it doesn't have to be a Quaker, though.
No, absolutely not.
There's just something about them.
Something about them. Anything.
Well, okay. As soon as I saw this in the script, I thought of Dinah from Marianne Evans' novel Adam Bede. Evans is better known by her pen name, George Eliot. She created this character named Dinah, who is a Methodist minister who dresses plainly and lives this countercultural life of service. She's she just is such a great character. She just shines on the page, this sincerity that she has. She moves to the beat of her own drum. She is, definitely being led by the Spirit. And she often confounds people by the choices that she makes and the places that she is unafraid to go because she feels led to do it. So I love that novel, Adam Bede, and Dinah. She even has a little Quaker bonnet that she wears.
Amazing.
All right, so here's the question again. Who is someone you've encountered in fiction that embodies Quakerness? Let us know what they did that resonated with you.
You can answer that question through several different channels. You can leave us a voicemail with your name and the town where you live. Our number is 317-Quakers. You can also send us an email with your response, or comment or DM us on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. Visit quakerstoday.org to see our show notes, all of the links to call, email, and follow us.